welcome to the Rob Black Show, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Rob Black, and it is Wednesday, October 8th, 2014. 11 a.m. on the West Coast, 2 p.m. on the East Coast, 3 p.m. Jerusalem time, and 3 a.m. in Moscow. I don't know if any of those times are correct, but I just wanted to do what Wolf Blitzer does when his show comes on. And for some reason, he gives times of a whole bunch of random points outside of the U.S. that I didn't know anybody really gave a shit about. I guess Jerusalem might be a time interest to some Israelis in the United States. I guess the Moscow time might be. It's like just weird times of places in the around the globe that Wolf Blitzer uses. I don't get it, but anyways, he does that. He sets the random times, and I always meant to comment on it. Every time we start the show, I forget about it because when we leave here, let me explain. I won't go into too much talk about my schedules because I'm sure a lot of you want to hear about Ebola. You want to hear about gay marriage. You want to hear about ISIS, of course, and you want to hear about the weather outside. So I will be brief. In the mornings, I watch the whole news cycles, as you would say, from MSNBC to CNN. Sometimes I'll throw over to Fox, and this starts at about 8:30ish, 9 o'clock. And about 5 hours prior to this, I do the last bit of stories because it's about 6, 7 a.m. When I go to bed on the East Coast time. So there's stories that have already been in the process of making the rounds on the news sites. And in the morning at 10 a.m., Wolf Blitzer comes on, and it's like this whole rundown of what is happening at that moment. And when he starts the show, he says, "Good afternoon from here." And if you are in Jerusalem, Moscow, Australia, New Zealand, Egypt, he just rattles off all these times. And he says the exact time that it is in those areas. And then at the end he says, "Welcome to the Situation Room," or whatever the hell it is. So, anyways, that's the schedule. That's what I do in the morning. And now that that's out of the way, we can move on with the Rob Black Show top stories. And that being the first top, right on the headline there, is Thomas Eric Duncan has passed away. Yes, Thomas Eric Duncan is no longer on this earth. He died a couple hours ago from, as they would say, complications from a disease known as Ebola. Yes, Thomas Eric Duncan has died from Ebola at Texas Health Presbyterian. Basically, he died at the place that killed him, if you really want to be technical. Those of you who have been hiding under a rock somewhere, he is the West African. He's the Liberian citizen who came here about, I think it was the 20th of September. Came here from Liberia, and from what it has been gathered and told, of course, the hot spot of Ebola, which is Liberia, Sierra Leone, that whole area of West Africa, that is right now killed close to 4,000 people in 2014. And you have people talking about this as if it's swine flu or bird flu, and it's scaring people, and it shouldn't, because these other diseases, we were told, were going to kill everyone, and they didn't, and this is just mass hysteria. Well, listen, mass hysteria, these diseases never killed 4,000 people in a span of a couple months. So let's get that clear. We did a story about this yesterday, and I'll keep hammering it home to the masses that this is a lot different than swine flu, bird flu, pig flu, dog flu, whatever flu you want to call it, the flu. This is on the level of HIV/AIDS as far as a disease that starts at a level in an area that nobody really gives a crap about, and it starts to steamroll and get to a point where people start to take notice, but by the time people start to take notice, it's too late, because it is spreading on people and on countries and on populations to the point where thousands become hundreds of thousands, and hundreds of thousands become millions, and before you know it, it is a disease that walks amongst us, and it's scary. So don't let people tell you that all of these fears are unwarranted. So Thomas Eric Duncan came from this hot spot of death. Let's call it that. On the 20th, he was helping a pregnant woman who had Ebola in Liberia. He was carrying her, he was holding her, and putting her in an ambulance or a car to take her to a hospital. Who knows exactly what he was doing, except he was handling an infected body. He then, a couple days later, boarded an airplane, came on over here to the United States of America, and the 25th, after about 5 days in the United States, in Texas, he started feeling a little sick. Started having some stomach cramps. Started feeling kind of flu-y. Went to the Texas Health Presbyterian Hospital, They diagnosed him as having just a flu. They basically ignored um, everything that he told them and his girlfriend told them about him just arriving here from the Ebola hotspot. They ignored all of the signs that this man was suffering from Ebola and chalked it up to having a common cold. Gave him some antibiotics and sent him on his way. And lo and behold, 4 days later, about the 28th, he went back to the hospital, this time way of an ambulance, while he was throwing up and pissing out of his ass, blood, you name it. He was basically expelling it out of every orifice. He went into the hospital. They then said, oh my God, he must have Ebola. And he was placed in an isolation chamber. So on the 28th, he finally was admitted to the Texas Health Presbyterian Hospital. And today, on October 8th, Duncan, Thomas Eric Duncan, died. So about 10 days ago, he finally was admitted, and now he is dead. So I would say that Texas Health Presbyterian has to take a little blame of A, killing the man, B, helping spread possibly a deadly disease throughout the Texas area, and C, because this is a big one, and C, actually not doing all they could to save this individual, help this individual, make this individual survive. Reports are coming out that there was no blood transfusions or anything of that nature that they are doing to the NBC news cameraman out there in Nebraska. The experimental drugs that they gave to Eric Duncan were administered extremely late in the process of him having the disease. Basically, having a wound that requires 100 stitches, and you wait until the person has bled out until you stitch them up. These are the things that are starting to come out of the reports from the hospital. And it makes you, of course, wonder and go back to my original statements months ago when Ebola had only killed about 400 people. And that was, why does America hate black people? Well, here is a black person, somebody from Africa, that came here. They had Ebola and basically was stuck in a bubble and let die. Ultimately, just waste away. And this was after the hospital turned him away as just being some black with no health insurance, some foreigner that came there to freeload off the great state of Texas and he should just get the hell out. And ultimately, what we have now is a situation in Texas where there's still 40, 50, 60 people that are under quarantine. They still haven't tracked down all the people that have come in contact with Duncan. And it's still a wait and see process as to other people contracting and coming down with Ebola. Now, the question becomes what to do with the body. Literally, now they have to take that body and handle it in a way that has never been handled before, as far as corpses and things that are happening with dead people in a hospital. They're going to have to put him in one of them death bags. They're going to have to double, triple seal him up. They're going to have to basically, as horrific as it sounds, burn him. You can't touch the body. They say that a corpse of somebody with Ebola is actually more infectious than the person that is alive with Ebola. So they're going to have to burn this corpse. They're going to have to basically handle it with hazmat suits. I mean, the whole process is incredibly dangerous. It really is. It's incredibly dangerous. And Texas Health Presbyterian are the ones that have to handle it. They are the same people that diagnosed Thomas Eric Duncan with the flu. Again, it's just disturbing. And what's even more disturbing is that the officials in Texas and the governor of Texas get a pass with basically being ground zero for this disease spreading throughout the United States. The great leader of Texas, Rick Perry, his leadership has brought people in positions of different government agencies and different hospitals that are so incompetent that they don't even just, use common sense with having somebody from an Ebola hotspot showing obvious signs of having Ebola and basically diagnosing them with a cold. It's scary. It's frightening. But that is Texas, home of Ted Cruz, home of a whole bunch of crazies that walk around with guns strapped to their back in Applebee's, and of course, Rick Perry. So, it's highly disturbing, and now it's a sit around and let's see what is going to be more fallout from the situation. And I'll tell you, one of the policies that are now being enacted by the government, and I don't agree with this, and the notion that once again if you are a Democrat, you have to have this philosophy that cannot either go against the president or can't have a stance that is too tough, because that is a faux pas for liberals. And I find it incredibly disturbing that Democrats, aka liberals, have to be put in this box, but Republicans are able to have different different groups from within their own party, and they're allowed to have certain power battles, and ultimately the Republican Party as a whole has to negotiate with other Republicans in their party, but they have different stances when it comes to Republican values and views. But the Democrats don't. And if you're a Democrat that disagrees with certain things in the Democratic Party, you are basically ostracized, or you are accused of not being a liberal. And for some reason, Democrats feel that if there's 50 issues that a Democrat fights for, and you disagree with Democrats on one of those issues, somehow you're an asshole, you're a traitor, you're not a true Democrat. And it's disturbing, because there are issues that come up in the Democratic Party that I truly disagree with. And it doesn't make me now a Republican. It just makes me want to come up with some new catchy name, like the Tea Partiers. Not that Tea Party is catchy, but the notion that there is a group from within the Republicans that has a name that everybody knows, and they represent a portion of the Republican Party that actually has power, and they actually do things within the Republican Party that gets them attention from old establishments like Boehner and John McCain. I don't agree with them, but I do respect what they have been able to do. The Democrats can't do that. The Democrats don't know how to do that. And the minute you start to speak differently on issues, Democrats attack you. And when it comes to this Ebola situation, I am directly opposite of my Democratic friends. My philosophy is you close down travel from the Ebola hotspots into the United States. The only travel that you let be conducted is that of military and health means. And what that is, doctors, military personnel that are building facilities, things of that nature are the only ways that you can get in and out of the Ebola hotspots. So we do not put ourselves in a position where we are not the mother of the world, and we are not helping people. So we are still able to help people. We are still able to send hundreds of doctors into the hotspots. where they can get a grip on this disease and snuff it out, wipe it out. We could still send military personnel there to build facilities and create an infrastructure so that we can wipe out the disease and we can eliminate it. Cut the snake off from the head and the body will die. That is what I believe we should do. But just regular tourist travel, regular family travel, basically, unless you are essential workers, you are essential personnel, you are doctors, things of that nature, you cannot get in and out of an Ebola hotspot to the United States. Plain and simple. That's not a nationalist system. It's not. We're not saying shut down the travel, shut down the border, you stay there, we stay here, all of you die, and that's it. Absolutely not. We're shutting down travel. We are keeping the American people safe and sending doctors and military personnel to those hotspots to give them the best chance to combat this disease. I think that is a safe and rational response. But right now, what we're doing is ludicrous, and that is leaving travel in place. If you are anywhere in the hot spots of West Africa and these Ebola territories, you can still travel to the United States, no problem. You just have to go through a screening process at the airports in Sierra Leone and Liberia, which amount to crap, considering Thomas Eric Duncan got through those checkpoints. But now what the United States has done, which as far as I'm concerned doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and that being starting today, JFK is one of the first airports out of the huge airport structures that service, huge amounts of international traffic. That airport, JFK in New York, is now going to have a screening procedure. They are going to have basically a set of custom agents, I guess if you want to call them that, armed with questionnaires where they will be talking to people as they get off the plane from these hotspots, and they will have these electronic thermometer gauges that they will be sticking into people's ears to see if they have temperatures. Because then, I guess, the concept is, once these people, and follow me on this is where this entire concept is ludicrous. When these people get off these hot spots of Ebola in West Africa, and now they make their way through the international terminals, in the JFK airport, and those terminals have bathrooms, have water fountains, have little style I should say, restaurants or places where you could get a drink. While they're walking through those areas, they are then met by people who are going to take their temperature and ask them questions. And if they flunk the questionnaire and their temperature's elevated, that means they could possibly have Ebola. So then my question is, what's next? You have somebody that's sick. They are now on U.S. soil. They are in an airport. They have made their way through a terminal. And even if some of these terminals don't have a little food station, they all got bathrooms. They all have a water fountain. They all have things that people are going to be touching that you would not want touched by somebody infected with Ebola. Plain and simple. Once the customs agent or TSA agent or some other 21-year-old kid that has been moved from the area of asking you to take off your shoes to go through the metal detector, and that person now is handling a temperature box and sticking it in your ear, that person now goes, wow, your temperature is 101. What happens then? They blow a whistle, boo, boo, and then what? What happens? And are all of these custom agents or TSA officers decked out in hazmat suits? I mean, are they prepared? Is this entire room covered in plastic? Is everybody in bubble wrap? Again, you're basically saying we're going to have a checkpoint at the airport, and potentially, if somebody gets off the hot spot of Ebola and makes their way through JFK International and they're sick, we're going to snuff them out and we'll catch them before they do what? They're already in the United States. They're already here. They're already been in contact with individuals in that airport. So now you get somebody sitting there with a elevated temperature, and now a bunch of what? CDC officials run in like the scene from E.T. and throw up tents and have the hazmat suits on? Like, what happens? If you have somebody with an elevated temperature, they're from an Ebola hotspot, we must assume that they have Ebola. So now you blow the whistle, and what happens? Everybody comes over with masks, gloves, and they do what? They take that individual, and where do they put him? Wherever they put him to wait for the B team to show up, that area is going to have to be disinfected. So that area now has to be disinfected. Well, the NBC cameraman said he contracted Ebola because he was disinfecting a car that had somebody with Ebola in it that died. And when he was cleaning, something must have splashed on him. Okay, so now we have somebody that just got off an airplane, walking through the airport. They show up to the 21-year-old TSA officer or customs officer. He sticks the thermometer in their ear, gives them a questionnaire, and they fail. Now he calls an official, and the official puts a hazmat suit on, takes that person, and puts him in a what? A bubble room? So now that person is in the bubble room awaiting for hazmat people from the CDC. So now the hazmat people from the CDC show up. They take that individual and bring them to a hospital in New York City. So now you basically have this infected person and this trail of infection, because now that room's got to be disinfected. This person has to be transported, so you have a transportation vehicle that eventually has to be disinfected. It goes to a hospital. Now the hospital gets a alarm sound that says, oh my God, we have an Ebola person showing up. We think he has Ebola. Elevated temperature, failed the questionnaire. So now you have a hospital getting ready to intake an Ebola patient. So now that person makes their way in, and everybody in that path has to basically be on heightened alert so that they don't get Ebola. I mean, this notion is ludicrous that we're going to have a checkpoint now once the person is in America, in the airport. And we're talking about a process to catch a disease that basically on a daily basis lets in millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of drugs from Colombia and Venezuela, wherever the goddamn drugs come from. You have thousands of people every week that are smuggling drugs and getting through customs and getting through TSA people. Don't they go through checkpoints? Don't they walk up to the TSA official? They walk just like this. They show them their passport and they go, oh, you're coming from Colombia. What's your reason here? Oh, I got friends. Oh, how long are you staying? I'm staying for 2 weeks. Oh, okay. Have a good trip. The guy walks through, and inside his stomach, he's got 3 pounds of cocaine wrapped in condoms. This isn't fucking fiction. This isn't something out of a movie like Running Scared. This happens on a daily basis across every major airport in the United States. So we don't stop drugs coming across the border via the airport, via TSA customs, but now we're going to put in the hands of these very same people the job to keep Ebola patients out of touching this, I guess, invisible airport line that separates them from airport world and real world. Because once they step foot onto the tarmac of JFK, they're in the goddamn United States. They're here. They didn't show up in some neutral purgatory land. They're in the United States. They're in JFK. They have Ebola, and they're like, do 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 do. Hey, how you doing? Hey, yeah, he's got a little fever. Not a big deal. Don't worry about it. Again, when people tell you, oh, well, somebody that has Ebola symptoms and they're contagious can barely walk. Bullshit. Bullshit. Duncan was feeling sick but didn't need wheelchairs or anything like that when he walked in to the Texas Health Presbyterian Hospital. If he did, I would assume the hospital would have treated him at that moment. If he literally walked in there, and people were carrying him and he was shitting himself, I'm sure they wouldn't have said, "You just got a cold, brother." He sat there on the 25th, they took his temperature, they felt him up, they did their doctory stuff, and they went, "You just got a flu, sir." And he went, "Really? I just feel like shit." And they went, "Here's some antibiotics, you could go." And he went, "Okay." Well, that same person can be walking the streets. That same person can get off the airplane and walk into the JFK airport. So they put the temperature in his ear. They have him do the questionnaire. And they go, "Oh shit, this guy probably has Ebola." But he's here. He's already here. He's already now been in contact with all these people. This makes no sense. This is asinine. And this is where I fundamentally disagree with my fellow Democrats. I don't believe that if you say what I said in the beginning, close travel down and only let military and doctors through so they can fight this disease, but you prevent citizens of Liberia or the hot spots in West Africa from coming into the United States. I don't think that is being racist. I don't think that's being a nationalist, and I don't think that's being not politically correct. That's just trying to protect the citizens of the United States and preventing an outbreak. Because let's face it, if the people at Texas Health Presbyterian were so naive and so ignorant to basically let Thomas Eric Duncan roll around for another 5 days after they had him in the hospital, and he basically was in contact with up to 100 people, what makes you think that isn't going to happen in any other area of the United States? What makes you think that's not going to happen again? And Texas is the second biggest state in our union. Texas is supposed to be highly advanced with incredibly skilled people living in that state. Texas isn't some backward state. They're not no Utah. They're not Virginia. They're not Georgia. That's Texas. Yeehaw! The Alamo. Yeehaw! The Dallas Cowboys. Yeehaw! And if that state has people that are hospital workers and nurses and doctors that let Ebola slide on by, what's going to happen in these other states that we all look at and go, a lot of stupid people come from there? So the notion to have checkpoints in the airports to basically identify. I mean, that's all that we're doing. We're now identifying. We're not preventing. We're identifying. And once we identify, then we have to take care of. That is ridiculous. And that is a policy that our president is implementing that I disagree with. And if I was a member of Congress, or I was in I was a senator, and I was a Democrat, I would be running around getting my fellow Democrats on board to oppose this. I would be starting some type of splinter faction and say, hey, just because we're Democrats doesn't mean we have to be passive when it comes to issues because we're afraid that some Starbucks Tai Chi drinking, coffee latte, uber liberal, whatever the hell they do, is going to condemn us and say that we're not protecting being a Democrat. No, that is bullshit. And it's about time that there's Democrats in our government that get a goddamn backbone. It's about time that there's a group of Democrats that say, we are a version of the Democratic Party that actually has a bite to us, and we can kick the ass of a gun-toting cowboy Republican from the red districts of Texas and Arizona. We can kick their asses because we are tougher than them. And it's about time the Democrats have some people like that, because this is not good policy to have a bunch of checkpoints right next to the drug checkpoints in our airports as they let pounds of cocaine and heroin and things of that nature get through this to the streets of New York, along with somebody with Ebola. So that's one of the big stories that are kicking around out there that is making its rounds, and we'll see what happens. It's disturbing, it's disgusting, and it is Ebola. So another big topic that is running like wildfire, and that is this new ISIS propaganda video, and the FBI's asking the American people for help. And they made a wanted poster like they made for Osama bin Laden that nobody was able to track down for years and 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 years later, until Obama captured him and killed him. Kind of like the wanted poster they made for Whitey Bulger that nobody was able to capture for years and 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 years, while he lived in a apartment with his girlfriend out there in I think Santa Monica, California, with millions of dollars hidden in his little shitbox apartment. So now the FBI has made a new poster, and they're asking for everybody's help that won't help. Not because they don't want to, but just because, when do you ever see the FBI wanted posters unless you go to the post office? And let's face it, who goes to a goddamn post office anymore? Okay? Who goes to a goddamn post office anymore? Anyways, the FBI made this poster of this ISIS figure who, when you watch the video, there's no way that this guy is from Syria, Iraq, Turkey, you name any Middle Eastern country, this guy ain't from it. I'd say this guy was a student at UC Berkeley, okay? And he came to the United States when he was like 4 years old, and he's got family that are part of the Saudi royal family. And he likes Tupac Shakur, he likes Jay-Z, he'll debate in his dorm room who was better, Tupac or Kanye. This guy literally speaks with an American voice. Literally, he's like, all of you people. It sounds fake. I mean, he sounds like a guy that is using a fake voice. Sounds like a guy that normally sounds like Ali G or Sacha Baron Cohen, okay? But for these videos, he's got to put on a scarier voice. So before he goes out there and cuts these promos, he's like, how should I do this, guys? Okay, here we go. Ready? You Americans, take a look behind me. Just, it's so over the top. American sounding. And the FBI even said, this is a guy that don't have a Arabic sounding dialect. He sounds like he's from North America. He has no foreign accent at all. They literally stopped short of saying he sounds like he was training at some acting school for voices and hoping to get a job in voiceover work. Hey, be the angry guy. Oh, okay. Hey, you're listening like he's in a wrestling promo. You know what I'm saying, brother? This is ISIS here, and we're gonna get ya, and we're gonna break your neck, and then cut it off. That's how the guy sounds. There is nothing Arabic sounding that comes out of his mouth. There is nothing. I experience more Middle Eastern sounding people when I go to the Glendale Americana Mall. All right? And I'm trying to get a cupcake from the sprinkles machine. And it's jammed up. And I go, excuse me, what can I hook up? Oh, hello, sir. Yeah, it ain't my dollar. There's more Middle Eastern sounding people in America than the ISIS leader that is screaming at the Americans in an American voice. It's crazy. And the video that ISIS put out is better work than you see in low-budget films being produced out there in Hollywood. Literally, it has the ISIS leader talking, and he's got a gun. And he's holding it like a rap video. He's holding it sideways. So he's like, all of you American people, I am the great one. The people behind me, they're Kashibas. Whatever name for non-Muslim. It's like a racist name for the non-Muslim. Not infidels, but it's an Arabic word for somebody who's not a Muslim. And he goes, the people behind me, they're digging their own graves. And the camera literally rack focuses. If you don't know what that is, ladies and gentlemen, it's in focus on the ISIS leader with the gun. And when he says, these people behind me digging their grave, the camera veers to the left a little, and the people that are digging the grave are out of focus. And when he says that and the camera veers to the left, it racks the focus so they go from out of focus and now they're in focus. I mean, they got a goddamn cinematographer shooting this stuff. And it shows them digging, like a video of migrant workers that you would see in a movie, or a chain gang, and the cops are on horses, and it's these row of workers lined up digging. I mean, if this isn't fake, and I'm not saying fake in the sense of actors, but fake in the sense of you have these ISIS leaders, or let's face it, Syrian leaders that are putting this together so that the United States and the coalition will help Assad kill these rebels, and he's masking all of them to basically be this fictional terrorist gang called ISIS, because they are literally positioned for a film crew. The way they're lined up digging their ditches, the way the ISIS leader is standing atop this a mountain with them in the back, and they're not scattered, they're lined up in rows. So it's like somebody went out and said, all right, guys, all right, you're in the number one position. You, come over here. You're a little bit shorter. You're taller. Come here. What's your name? What's your name? What's your name? What's your name, Habib? I'm going to call you Jimmy. Your name's Jimmy right now. You're Jimmy. Jimmy, go to the 2 position. You. Not you. You, the one with the mole on your face. Come here. You're going to stand there. All right. Now, okay. All right. Frankie. And that's the ISIS leader. Yes, look. Frank, we're not in character. Oh, I'm sorry. What can I do for you? All right, Frankie, you're going to stand right about here. Because when I rack focus, okay, I need to be able to see Jimmy in them. Are you following me? Yeah, I follow you. Okay. All right, let's do it. All right, let's try this. All right, and wait a minute. Gun, turn the gun a little. The gun. You know, remember the video I showed you? You know, Thug Life, yes. Turn the gun, turn it. Perfect. Let's go. Let's do this! Action! And then they start this film. I mean, it's a 40-minute film. They show stuff being blown up, and it's like, it's that stop motion photography. So it's live as it's happening, so it's fast. So the missile goes, skoom, when it hits, boom, and then it goes the half explosion in slow motion. Like shit that I don't even know how to do. It's like, so it's like the fighters are like, I'm gonna get your, like they're fucking Matrix videos. It's amazing. It's amazing. The quality of these ISIS videos are cinematic beauty. Seriously, they're cinematic beauty. They've come a long way. A long way. And that's why this is such a complex issue. And the notion that President Obama should have been fighting these people and arming rebels and getting these individuals to fight ISIS. Listen, this is nothing like Al-Qaeda and 9/11 terrorist attackers. First off, the 9/11 terrorist attackers were all from Saudi Arabia. So in theory, if we really wanted to get revenge on the people that conducted 9/11 and who was responsible, we really needed to bomb Saudi Arabia. We needed to invade Saudi Arabia. We needed to take over their country and kill the entire Saudi family, and that would have been justice for what happened in 9/11. We ain't going to do that. Just like we don't say anything, do anything to the Saudi Arabia regime and what they represent, considering that they are just as barbaric as ISIS. They really are. But this group, ISIS, is not a bunch of box cutters or box cutter wheeling Saudis that are looking to fly airplanes into the United States. And it is deeper. There is a lot of things that are going on in the Middle East that are not black and white. Let's face it. ISIS is being funded, okay? This organization does not have what they have because they're running into oil fields in the middle of the night and stealing a couple barrels of oil and then going on to the black market and selling it. Think about that concept, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, just think about that concept. What everybody's being told is ISIS mainly is funded by them stealing oil, selling it on the black market, and that oil on the black market is converted to gasoline and things of that nature. And this process is what is bringing tens of millions of dollars a day to ISIS. Think about how much oil has to be stolen. Think about how much oil has to be transported. Think about everything that goes into this process. And you're going to tell me that there's no video of that being done. There's nothing of the sorts of stopping this type of operation? Bullshit. Because it's not happening. That is a subterfuge. That is a rouge. That is something that is being put out there because at the end of the day, it's the Saudis and Qatar and people like that that have their own people that are funding ISIS. Because remember, you all seem to forget, as much as we say ISIS is bad, and as much as we're having that drilled into our heads, and other people don't like ISIS, they all hate Assad and the regime that controls Syria more. And ISIS is fighting Assad. So ultimately, if you feed ISIS weapons and money, they are going to fight Assad. So you have people in Qatar, and these other regions that are feeding ISIS money and weapons because they don't like Assad. They want this devil that they all made deals with to get rid of Assad. And then, of course, the United States gets rid of ISIS. It's kind of like Qatar and Saudi Arabia and all these Middle Eastern countries created ISIS. They created ISIS to do this dirty work. But then what happened was ISIS got out of hand. They decided that they weren't going to work for people anymore, and that all this money they were given and all of the weapons they were given was enough that they could actually create their own country. And they said, well, why should we be hired assassins for these other groups? If we're going to fight Assad, we're going to take Assad out and we're going to take over Syria. And then once we take over Syria, we're going to go into Saudi Arabia. And then once we go into Saudi Arabia, we're going to go into Turkey. Once we go into and now you have these other countries going, oh, Jesus, we created Frankenstein. Hey, America, now you need to come in and help us. We kind of fucked up. We created a monster. You know, you've done that before. You created Bin Laden. You know, you've done this. Well, we accidentally did it too, so we need you to help us. So here we are in this giant mess that everybody thinks is so easy to just fix. And you have people, we need boots on the ground. You need boots on the ground. And then people say, yeah, but the Americans don't want that. And you have people go, well, we already have boots on the ground. We're already in a war. And you have to say, no, we're not. Why are you trying to bullshit the American people and say, well, we already have 1,000 troops there. We already have 2,000 troops there. What do you call that? And then you have to remind them, no, when President Obama took office, we had 144,000 troops on the ground. Well, 144,000 compared to 2 is an extremely different scenario. And the American people do not want another 144,000 troops on the ground fighting ISIS. Having 2,000 troops or 3,000 troops on the ground in positions where they are protecting embassies and they're doing recon work is completely different than having brigades of thousands and thousands and thousands of soldiers that ultimately we have to be braced for having a death count every day. You all remember that. You all remember every single day we would hear 10 soldiers were killed today, 5 soldiers were killed today, 6 soldiers were, thousands of soldiers were killed in the George Bush-Iraq war. So this notion that we already have boots on the ground, so everybody just needs to chill out. What do you think? No, we don't. We don't have boots on the ground. People understand boots on the ground as being, hey, 25,000 soldiers have been called up and they will be deployed and they will be in Syria in 2.5 weeks. That is boots on the ground. So this notion that we have to have 100,000 troops on the ground fighting ISIS is ridiculous, because we're not fighting ISIS. It's not a bunch of lone wolf jihadists that are looking to go and attack the Statue of Liberty. This is highly, highly more detailed and sophisticated than we ever could imagine, because they really are a organization that was created by a lot of individuals in the Middle East. They are not this strong because they steal barrels of oil. They're this strong because they're funded with Middle Eastern money and United States military hardware. That is happening on a daily basis. There was a report the other day that has shown the bullets, the ammunition, the rounds that are being fired by ISIS soldiers are USA made. Think about that. And think about when everybody wants us and or wanted us to arm rebels that we had no idea who they were. Think about that. Back, what, a year ago, year and a half ago? And you actually had people go, we got to arm you. Arm these rebels. John McCain, we got to arm these rebels. And we kept saying, but who are the rebels? Those guys over there. Well, who are those guys? If everybody remembers, ISIS was not running rickshaw all over the Middle East 2 years ago, but they were there. You don't have 30,000 ISIS soldiers that just pop up out of the fucking blue. They were there. They just weren't called ISIS. They were different groups, all biding their time to get enough funding and enough military weapons to then come together under one roof with a catchy name and create what they've created now. But they were all there. All of these ISIS soldiers were already there. A lot of them are part of the Saddam Hussein regime that George Bush and Dick Cheney created. The same people that were keeping Iraq under control are now the very same people that are creating chaos in that region. It's like we just moved one group from one burning house to another burning house. Said, all right, burn this house instead of this house. We just shuffle the garbage around. It's like sweeping dirt from one under one chair to another. And we go, look, it's clean. And you go, well, what about over there? And you go, well, you're not focused on that. You're only focused on this. This is what we're talking about. That's clean. And then we go, okay, well, we're going to come over here. And they go, okay, well, hold on. And they sweep all that dirt to the other side. And you go, well, wait a minute, but now that side's dirt. And you go, whoa, you're focused on this. This is what we're talking about. This is clean. And you say, well, why can't we just take the dirt and throw it out and then we're clean forever in this area? And they go, oh, we can't do that. And it just won't work. It's impossible. And you go, well, then why the fuck did we start this cleaning process in the first place? We should have just kept a little dirty there, a little dirty there, because ultimately it wasn't bothering nobody. Well, you know what? Shit happens, so move on. And that's basically where we're at. So 2 years ago, when everybody was saying, all these rebels, they need tanks and they need airplane, I mean the machinery, the military hardware that people like John McCain and Lindsey Graham and these morons wanted us to give these rebels, who we had no idea who the rebels were, because ultimately these rebels have turned out to be ISIS. 2 years ago, the rebels were nothing more than ISIS leaders and soldiers, but they were just known as rebels. Again, right now they say there's over 30,000 ISIS fighters. Well, that wasn't the case a year to 2 years ago. And that's when John McCain and Lindsey Graham wanted to arm these rebels. Well, these 30,000 soldiers were there. They just weren't named ISIS. They didn't just pop up out of the ground. They didn't just fall out of the sky. They were always there. They were biding their time and putting a plan together and hoping retard McCain and retard Lindsey Graham would get the president to send them tanks and surface-to-air missiles and anti-aircraft rocket launchers. That's what they were hoping for. And what happened was Obama didn't take the bait, didn't arm these people. So at the end of the day, all of these rebels said, all right, well, we're not going to get armed, so let's just do our plan. They all got together, they stamped themselves as ISIS, and started their march, and started to go and take military weapons. And that's it. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. And now we have what we have, which is an American citizen. Somebody that is from the United States, somebody that was schooled in the United States, somebody that has American ties, somebody that has ties to the West, is now making videos and cutting promos for ISIS and telling everybody to watch what they do. And then at the end of the video, as they go to shoot these hole diggers in the head, the camera goes to black, you hear gunfire, and you presume that they are now dead in the holes that they dug for themselves. Just like a crime movie that you see that Martin Scorsese makes, or Francis Ford Coppola, or anybody for that matter that makes a movie where the guy is digging and there's a guy holding a gun on him and he goes, isn't it ironic that you're digging your own grave and as soon as you're done, I will shoot you? And the guy gets done and he goes, all right, what are you going to do? And he goes, boom. I mean, literally, it's like something out of a Hollywood movie. And that is where we are, ladies and gentlemen. That is what is happening as far as ISIS, the ISIS video, and all of the crazy things that are happening in the Middle East. Now, I'm sure we're going to have more updates tomorrow morning, but right now, that is where we stand. ISIS, a North American voice, making videos that have special effects and rack focus. It's insane. And we created this monster. Thank George Bush and Dick Cheney for ISIS, because it's their Frankenstein.